We're born programmed to believe in our physical senses. And generally speaking, people are very deceived by them. Because there's a whole invisible world that is actual reality. You could say angels and demons, but really a simple way of relating it is intention. And how in that invisible world of intention that everything comes out of, which is really the basics of our heart, is the reality. And I've mentioned in a lot of relating here that, most acts are not absolutely pure. There's a mixture because that's where we're dwelling in our hearts. A little bit of selfishness, even when we give. A little bit of self-absorption in when we're sharing. And so the reality of working in your own invisible self and cleaning out those corners. See, that's unseen by the world. Now, the fruits of that for people who have eyes, yeah, they can see it progressively in accordance to the work they're doing in themselves. But the real work is that. And that's where the outside can be very deceptive. Because a person could be, let's say, a very wealthy person who's doing a lot of wicked stuff in the background that people do not see, but wicked because of the intention and the disregard that he would have for how it's going to affect masses of people. Now, there's a lot of that going on in this world. We have a history of it, and it hasn't stopped yet, that's for sure. But in order, and people have learned this in the higher realms, if they're going to be public figures or known by the public, to cover themselves. Sometimes they believe in their own covering. I'm sure a lot of them do. But yet, deep inside, they know. They know what they've ripped off. They know how they hurt people by what they do. They know the cost of the things they're doing. Deep inside, there's nowhere to hide. But yeah, a lot of them guys are deceived within themselves as far as how they perceive their own intentions. Yep. So, what I was going to relate was that, a lot of these guys, what they do, they got PR. Do a lot of giving, a lot of charity work. And yet, they could be part of what was creating the very thing that they're saying they're going to fix with all their billions of dollars. So it's a cover. I had a good friend. I met him. He was an elderly man. I'd mentioned him before, Willie. I was on the road, and he got brought up wealthy as a child. And when I met him, he was retired actor, and he also was the super producer of all the TV shows I grew up with in Warner Brothers, Willie. And we would have a lot of discussions. And one day, Willie asked me about Danny Thomas. Now, if you're younger, you don't even know who Danny Thomas is. He was an actor, comedian, had a TV show, when I was pretty young. And he was known in Hollywood as a good man. And, I could easily believe that. But he did a lot of charity work. Building hospitals with the monies that he was given. And so Willie was asking me about how good Danny Thomas was because he gave all this money. And I said, I don't know. I don't know the man. And I'm not really the one who's going to judge him anyways. But Willie got very upset with me that I wouldn't know if he did all these good works. So I explained to him that the intention is bigger than the outer. And I related the widow's mite story, which he thought was very trite. to relate. Willie being, his little argumentative self. And, but he got angry with me because he was still in a state of mind, if he gave enough, that would be. Now, here's a man who didn't really totally believe in a living God. And he had a really good heart. And he received me, I mean, like I was his son almost. And we knew each other for quite a few years, went through a lot of things together. And, but this was in our initial getting to know each other. I was helping another brother who ended up walking with me to fix his house. We were working in there, not for money. But he gave us a donation, but we were living in his house. And it was really beautiful in Hollywood and in Hollywood Heights. So he got angry with me because I kept going back to the invisible intention. And he couldn't get that. But that is the reality. That is the reality. I mean, here's Jesus busting all these Pharisees and these religious people. You're doing all these outer works, but the inside's full of dead man's bones. And here's this woman who's giving all that she has. Nobody's noticing this. That's why it's invisible. Unless you have eyes to see. And then that's because you've been born in the invisible. And you're growing in it. Yeah, the far out thing about it is, the deepest services that people do. And Jesus mentions it quite a bit if you really look at what he's saying. Nobody sees or even seems against them. It's like walking down the road like we did. There's, out of this population of the country, it was a very minimal amount of people who really appreciated that we were giving our lives to raise up, and be vehicles for the Lord to really increase everyone. We had people screaming at us, get a job, throwing things at us. And here we were working and not asking for really just enough to go down the road. And you got these preachers and these fancy, but for that very reason that people are so caught up on the outside appearances of things and not really seeing the inside. Now, you could walk down the road in a white robe and have the wrong intention. Or start out with a mixed intention. And then have a choice. And, all of us probably had a little bit of a mixed intention. But it wasn't very tempting for most people. Other than maybe a little bit of ego that the kind of lifestyle Amen gave us. No, because you were going to be the least in the world in everything physical. Your joy and your enjoyment was going to be in your relationship with Him and being used by Him and, watching Him working. That was going to be the happening, and that's what would inspire brothers and sisters to stay. Because, in a lot of ways, physically it wasn't that easy, and especially the reflections you would get back from the world, in this country especially, with the materialistic mindset. So yeah, working on the inside. One of the Amen statements one day was 2 brothers could be sweeping and be doing completely different things. Like if you're doing it, and you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm doing this so I can get such and such and so, get something back or impress people or be glorified for it. It goes on and on. All those things. Now, you could be very absorbed in one of those things or that nature and not even realize it. Because you got to really be getting down on yourself. And I've watched it. I've watched it in our family. The self-glorification is a huge deception. And unless you're really getting down with it, it'll get you. It'll get you. You know, I had a space here in this experience with Amen living here where one of our brothers, who I was very close to, was jealous of where the Lord had put me, which was just really hard work, actually. But he had me taking care, being in charge of this property where we're staying, and he was coveting it, and he was pretty bad about it, and we were close. And because I could see his intention wasn't right, it was really hard for me to just give it to him, that stewardship. But Amen squeezed me until I did, which freed me. And so he got it. He got the whole shebang, which was cooking dinner every night and keeping the yard. And you know, at the time we were somewhere else building, and the whole gang was somewhere else most of the time. But it's a big yard, big area to take care of. And the brother was really good in the garden and really good in the kitchen. But part of his intention was self-glory. And that was revealed to me. And it was ended up being revealed to him too, because what he ended up finding out, that part wasn't getting fed. Quite the opposite. That's what ended up. You know, there's a difference between seeking self-glory and, you know, just appreciating one another. So yeah, you know, a lot of serving on the outside is not the most important serving that we do. Not to diminish its value at all. But it's not the most important. The most important is to get it right on the inside of why we're doing what we're doing. You know, I was living on the streets, and I had a San Diego connections up and down the coast and even inland. I could stay in a house every night if I wanted to. I had a place I could rest under a tree by the highway to just get some real rest. But I had, you know, good connections. They were all good for the time. And one day I was walking towards one of my connections, and, you know, they all had things that they could, you know, serve me with. And I was thinking of a shower and whatever else I was going to get there. And then I caught myself. Oh, you're going there to get a shower. Oh, you're going there to get this and that, food or whatever. And I reminded myself, all that stuff's available. But why was I going there? See, that's the work. It's getting down with that part in ourselves. You know, you look at Jesus Christ, and I look at Amen, same way. The intention, the witness I have inside of me, and that's who Jesus Christ is absolute pure intention in all that he did. Everything for the Father first, and through that for all of his people. Everything, to the bone. Driven totally there. And even the closest brothers to him at the time, you can't see it until you see it in yourself first. Of course, that's why he came here, to reinstate that in us, that ability and that recognition, so we could work through our own stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that's, I would say, the most important part. And then the deceptions in the world, the outer ones, that everybody's deceived with because there's so much into the physical appearances of things. They start getting peeled away. You don't get deceived by them anymore because you're not deceived within yourself. First things first. Amen.